Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. The good news is that this is online, so you don't need fuel to get anywhere. Obviously, lots of people are having problems with fuel in the UK at the moment. So if you've made it into the office, well done. Try not to run out on the way home. I'll give everybody a couple of minutes just to jump on. I can see people are making their way on, which is good. If you can see us, hear us, please put something in the chat box at the bottom. It's always nice to know that it's working. People can see us and hear us. As we go throughout the webinar today, if you do have any sort of connection issues, we're not expecting anything, then just sometimes closing the Zoom call and jumping back on can help out as well. So just message if you do have any issues as you're going along, but hopefully it works. We've got a couple of messages coming through. Okay, hi Katrina, hi Cliff. Thanks for jumping on and saying hello. So just to confirm that today's webinar is actually CPD certified as well. So we'll confirm that afterwards in the email follow-up. But you can actually use this webinar as part of your CPD register and CPD points, depending on how your governing body calculates those. When you get to the end of your year, and you've got to submit that. So that's a big one to mention. This is a CPD qualified webinar. So if you've got any friends or colleagues in the office that need to get some CPD points, please make sure that you pass this around to them as well. As we're going throughout the webinar today, please feel free to put any questions in the chat box as we're going along. We might pick some out as we're going along, but if not, we have got a Q&A section at the end. So we will make sure that we cover all of those off at the end as well. So just to confirm, any questions, please put in and we'll cover those off at the end, definitely. I'm joined today by Bryce from MinuteDock. Bryce is joining us over from New Zealand. So we've managed to catch him just before your bed's down. So it's 11 p.m. over there. So thanks for joining us, Bryce, because I know it's a late one for you. We've worked with MinuteDock for a long while now at Xero magazine, and I think there was an announcement this week that MinuteDock have got 10 years of Xero integration with Xero, which is fantastic, a great achievement, and it's just testament to them and the product that they built, really. So today's webinar is going to be a good interactive one. So as you can see, we've got screen share on. Bryce is going to run through the system, what it does, really give you an insight into it, which is what we always like, always good and practical, and give you a follow-up on how to actually get a free trial and start using it yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Bryce, who's going to do a lot more justice in terms of introducing himself and introducing MinuteDock. Over to you, Bryce.
Great, thanks for that, David. Yeah, my name is Bryce. I handle the sort of onboarding and customer support for MinuteDock, and it's great to be here. So what we're going to do today basically is give a brief sort of overview of the general functionality of MinuteDock, and we'll go in for a bit with the integration aspect with Xero, and demonstrate sort of how the invoicing integration works for you. But we'll get cracking right off the bat, and if there are any questions, we can handle them either as they come up or at the end with the Q&A. So the first thing you're going to do when you jump onto your MinuteDock, when you start your trial or you're logging onto your account, the first thing you're always interested in with the time tracking app is how do you track the time. With MinuteDock, it's pretty flexible. You can run a timer like so, and have that live if you need to. You can also enter your time manually, and you can backdate time too. So I've started my timer here. I can use my text box to write any notes or anything I like to keep there. I can adjust the timer if I sort of have forgotten to get started or something like that. I can click in and adjust that time and then keep going with it. But perhaps the easier way is just to use the simple text commands. If I type 1 hour and press tab, it's going to add an hour to my timer there. So that's the flexibility when you're actually using the timer itself. There's also the ability to backdate your entries. If I use a simple brackets command and type, say, something basic like yesterday or last Friday, then that's going to backdate my entry to that date, presuming that I've forgotten to log it at that time. So that's one way of doing that. The other thing, of course, is that you can always log your entries and go into the list and actually click on an entry to edit it as well. And that all that editing functionality is there in the list too. So a lot of people will sometimes even just log blank entries and just go and fill them out if they're not using the live timer. Some people like to switch between entries as they're working during the day. They might be doing, say, some admin work, but want to swap over and record a meeting, but be able to come back to that admin work later. And you can do that with MinuteDock. There is an option here to redock an entry. What it'll do is put the entry back into the active bar and start the timer again. You'll have noticed that there are a couple of labels attached to this entry. Obviously, once you're getting your time started, your recordings going, you want to be able to categorize those recordings. And in MinuteDock, there's a number of ways and a number of levels you can do that on. The first level, and obviously the most important one, is the client, obviously, that you're working for. And in MinuteDock, we call that the contact. If you're using an integration like Xero, then what's going to happen is that when you set up your integration, MinuteDock's going to conveniently import all your contacts, your client contacts from Xero and create them for you in MinuteDock, so you won't have to go through and do that manual setup. And you'll notice the link with Xero icons there. That's going to let me also, when it comes to later to invoicing, to send those invoices through to the correct, under the correct client details ever at the Xero end. So I've set up a contact, and the way we add that to our time entry is as though it was sort of social media, basic social media. We just use the @ symbol. It's going to either come up with our list, or we can shorten it by just going a little further into the name itself. And that's then attached to our contact. Or if I'm doing it manually from the base, I can just go through my list here and add whichever one I like. Simple. The next sort of way you might like to categorize your work, obviously, is by the work that you're actually doing. So it's attached to a client. We also want to be able to say, well, this was an admin, this was a meeting, this was X, Y, Z, and be able easily to filter out that time data for a number of reasons, whether that might be for our reporting, our time management, or whether it might be later for invoicing as well, for differentiating between a given rate or a project that you might be working on. We have two labels, two types of labels to organize that work. There are projects and our task labels. The best way to think about them is that your task label is a sort of jack of all trades. That's your general label, your general way of organizing your data within MinuteDock. So for most of what you're doing is you're going to want to use a task label. And projects is more of a subcategory of your client. So when I have a project label in MinuteDock, that label needs to be assigned to a specific client, whereas the same is not true for tasks. They can be generic. So generally, when I think of projects, I mostly think of, say, if there were different site locations that I was working on under the same billing entity, I might differentiate by using a project, or more generically, if there were different sort of broader projects that I was doing work under for the same client, I might differentiate, especially if those were temporary projects rather than sort of the ongoing and regular work, which I might prefer to use a task for. both tasks and projects are going to work in a very similar way when it comes to applying them to a time entry. Similar again as we use the social media type of way of adding our client with the @ symbol, we're going to use a hash for both our tasks and our projects. They'll show up there. Notice that the admin one's already been attached to this one, but I can add multiple tasks to a single time entry to help with my categorization. And when it comes to filtering out my data when I'm looking for specific things, which is useful, for example, if I wanted to record non-billed work that I didn't intend to actually include in any invoices or charge my clients for, I could use a task and tack that on to the end of my time entries, and then that lets me filter out when I'm looking for my non-billed work, my written off work, to look at that value and see where my time is going. That's a sort of general overview of the timer and how that works. When it comes to creating those projects and dealing with those clients, you are able to specify a given rate or have things default to certain rates further up the ladder. So for example, I might have a rate specific to a contact. And now that contact rate, if I'm using that contact on my time entry, that time's going to be charged at that rate when I go and create and generate my invoices based on the time I've used there. If I don't have that specific rate attached, it's going to take it from the account's default rate, or from the default rate that may or may not have been set up for a specific user. And if I just look in here, I can see that I don't have a set rate. So it's going to be taken from the account rate otherwise. But now that it's got a specific rate, that contact, whenever I use it, will have that rate applied. And the way it works is that it starts with the contact. Then if the project has a specific rate, that's going to override the rate that might be attached to the contact, as that's a sort of more specific categorization of the work. And then finally, when you're getting to your tasks, which is the very sort of basic detail of exactly what the work is, that any specific rate in that task label is then going to back up the chain and override what may be attached to a given contract. So it's something to be aware of when you're thinking about how you structure the way that you're setting up your rates. Often, if you are using a number of different rates, the best way to do things is to focus right at the end on the task level and set those up in there so that they're applying correctly, and you won't need to worry about the other levels, as they'll be just conforming to that task rate. When we've set up our time entries, we've recorded our time. Obviously, we want to be able to bill our client and send them an invoice. And with MinuteDock, one of our sort of most important functions is that we integrate with accounting software like Xero, like QuickBooks, like Wave, to streamline that process by generating draft invoices in MinuteDock based on time entries, and then pushing those invoices through to the given accounting software. So we'll look at the Xero integration today and run a bit of an example invoice. You'll know when you're connected or not as to whether that Xero tab is showing up for you. And establishing the connection is very easy. All you're going to do is go to your account page, use the connections option, select Xero from the list, and then it's just going to prompt you to log into your Xero to authorize the connection being set up. And once that's done, everything's going to happen automatically in terms of things like your contact list being brought over from Xero. Once you've got your team going, you're set up and connected to Xero, you're going to be able to use MinuteDock's invoicing system to create those invoices based on your time recordings. So we'll go through an example here. It's going to organize initially your options based on the client label you have attached. So you're going to see the various hours that you have there. And then when you click on a given client to make an invoice for them, you'll come to the screen here where you'll have the option of either just invoicing everything that is yet to be part of an invoice, invoicing based on a specific project label, or using this custom invoice option, which will give you some filters which you can use to pick and choose more specifically which time entries you're going to include. And then you'll be able to see, as you're using those filters, the exact time entries that are going to be included in this generated invoice. Once I'm happy with the time aspect of what I'm wanting to include in the invoice, I can click on to my next step. So those time entries now having been integrated into being a part of this invoice, when I send this invoice, those time entries are going to be tagged as having been invoiced, and they're going to be removed from that initial pool of time to be invoiced. So they won't obviously get attached accidentally to more than one invoice. After you've been happy with the time you've selected, MinuteDock's going to generate a few invoice lines based on the time. Initially, what you're going to see is just a big list of one line per time tracking entry. But what you'll be able to do is adjust and use the formatting selections to decide what information you want to be grouped together. Whether, for example, if I have an administration task label, if I want all of my task labeled admin entries to be grouped together into a single line, I can use that and merge them all together rather than having 100 different lines, one for each time entry. And then the formatting options will let you fill out the description area with everything from the descriptions within the actual tasks, project labels, the labels themselves, who was recording time entries, the dates they were recorded on. And then perhaps most importantly to consider is the entry description, which is the generic text that I might have taken as notes. So quite a good idea often is to think about, even at the point of when I'm making my time entries, and just being aware, obviously, that I'm going to want to bill them. If I am aware of that and I sort of lay out the notes that I'm taking as though that were a line in an invoice, I can then use this entry description to very simply fill out my invoice and save myself time when it comes to actually creating and getting the invoice how I want it to look. Other than that, you're absolutely able to adjust any of the data, the lines in the invoice, and edit them. I can change the quantities and the rates, etc., without affecting the time entries that are associated with the invoice, just affecting the invoice itself. So if I change an hours in the list here, that's not going to edit my time entries, which will obviously let me take account and have a look at where I'm potentially losing out on billable time, etc. when I go to do my reporting. And it also will let me write off a given amount of time by including the time entries within an invoice to mark them as invoiced, but then actually not charging them. I cannot, two options. I can delete a given line and select to write them off, or I can just adjust the lines themselves to account for the time that I'm expecting to be written off. If I was intending to charge for my 30 minutes here, I could just change that and go forward. And then the last thing to think about is if I'm wanting to bill for anything that's fixed, that's not necessarily a part of a time entry that I've made, I can manually create and edit lines. I can also use this manual line creation to include negative amounts if I'm applying a discount. And being flexible in that way. Once I've got everything how I like it, how I want it to look, I've got my my tax rates from Xero, whatever I want them to be, and the account defaults, etc. I can go to my next step. And now I'm going to have the option of setting my dates, my due dates for the invoice, but then sending to Xero or sending directly by email. In this case, obviously we're connected to Xero, so there's no reason we wouldn't just send this to Xero. What it's going to do is when it sends through, it's going to create a draft invoice in Xero. Goodness. Suspect that's going to be an issue with the email I've got attached to that contact. Apologies. You'll notice that as I've clicked out of the invoicing setting, it has saved my draft. I don't have to go through the entire process again. And now, hopefully, since I fixed that up, we shouldn't have an issue sending through. Okay, there might be a connection issue. At the moment, those normally get resolved within an hour or two, but we'll just go through to Xero anyway to demonstrate how that will look on the normal occasion. Apologies for that. So if I go to Xero and I look at my draft invoices, that's where the invoice I send from MinuteDock is going to appear. And it's fully editable as you like within Xero to apply any sort of branding, etc. that you might like to change your tax details, etc. Or even to change and add lines, edit rates as well. And then obviously once the invoice is exactly how I like it within Xero itself, it can then be sent out. So when I've finished making my invoice within MinuteDock, it's useful to be aware that it's not directly going out. There is the availability for me to use Xero's system to continue editing and making things how I want them within that invoice. We might come back to the invoice just at the end to see if the connection's fixed up, but for now we'll move on to reporting on time entries within MinuteDock. And this is where the flexibility around the labeling system, the tasks, the projects is going to come to the fore, because organizing that data very specifically is going to let me filter out and identify and report on the time tracking data that I'm looking for at a very specific level. So if I look at my filter options here, very similar to the ones that I'm going to see in other areas in the invoicing area, and also in the goals area, which we'll look at reports. I'm going to be able to filter based on who I'm looking for in terms of the billing client that's attached to a given entry, in terms of any specific projects, in terms of the task labels, and that can be done on an individual basis or on multiple. And then in terms of whether time entry has been tagged as having been part of an invoice, or whether it has a rate included on it or not. And then I can obviously filter those reports based on a date or using the quick options. So if I just look at this entire month, I can see the time data that I've accumulated there. I've got a few useful charts that sort of split things out to take a look at by a given contact, by a project, by a task. I can also export these data sets into CSV files, spreadsheet files. Clicking on the button will download the file for me. And then if I'm interested in looking at this time entry specifically, I can flick over to the view and have a look at the specific time entries that are within this data set that I've created. You'll notice that there are a couple of these time entries that are highlighted red. That's an indication that according to my account settings, the account doesn't consider these entries to be completed. So this is obviously a useful tool for me if I'm just double checking my work over the course of a week. I can go back, take a quick look and make sure that I have everything how it should be. Once I put in my client contact details in there, that highlight is going to go away to indicate, yeah, all sorted. The other thing to be aware of is that the entire data set are not specific to the settings of the chart, the various charts. The entire data set, including the individual time entries, can also be exported into a CSV file, useful for running things like payroll, etc. And that button's there. And the other thing to be aware of is that if I'm doing this regularly, say at the end of the week, going through as a manager, etc., and considering the various work that's been done and just checking things off, I can set, say, my last week, use my filters to get the data I'm looking for, and I can create pinned reports to run quickly rather than having to use the filters every single time I come in. Right, we'll whip through onto the goals section now, having run over those reports. So goals in MinuteDock is targets, and it's also budgets, and it's hours-based goals and budgets. So if I set up a goal within MinuteDock, I can do so looking for to keep track of a given target. I might be looking to reduce my meeting hours, etc. So I can set up a target, for example, of a few hours every week on the meetings. And if I set that up, what that's going to do is it's going to create a sort of visual tracker for me over in my time section, so that when I take a look and I'm recording my time, I can see at any given moment where I'm at against my goals, for the week or day or month or whatever it might be, however I've set it up. And you can see that this week already I've recorded 4.1 out of my 5-hour allotment for those meetings. And the other way it works is I can flick that, and instead of it being a goal that I want to accomplish, I can make it a budget, which is going to change the coloring of the target as we go towards a budget. It's going to indicate with the red instead of the green that, well, you know, you're getting towards your limit here in terms of what you want to be recording. The goal system's not going to ever stop you from recording time, so it's not going to cut you off and say, look, you've recorded 5 hours this week, you can't record any more time under that meeting label. It is just going to give you the sort of visual track, an indication of how you're going against a given target. So that's something to be aware of. And then it's also worth being aware that the goals system is also available when it comes to projects and clients to be able to set a given target or a budget of hours against a given project. And then that goal there is going to show up within the box for my project or for a given client when I look at my list. Just as another way of organizing myself and keeping track of those targets and those budgets. All right, let's just take a look to make sure. Going over things. Let's have one last crack at this invoice to see if the connection's sorted itself out. Doesn't look to be. Maybe an issue there with how things are set up for that contact. I suspect that I haven't set up my contact information for that MinuteDock contact correctly, yeah, which is why that wasn't going through. So it'll be an issue probably with the email that I typed in. I might have put a typo in the system saying no, there's no real email there. So when I send through my draft invoice, I can click on through and I can see here it is in Xero as my draft ready to be edited further as I like it, and then sent out. Okie dokie. So it's really worthwhile, generally speaking, obviously when you're looking at any sort of solution for any issue, but specifically with time tracking, it's valuable to have a play around with things, get acclimatized and get an understanding of how things might work for you. MinuteDock, we offer a no obligations free trial available just from our sign up page, minutedock.com/signup, which you're welcome to jump on and have a play around. Generally speaking, MinuteDock is we're designed to work best for that sort of office-based professional work, often incremental sort of time recordings. So guys like accountants and bookkeepers are going to find the system really useful. What we don't do is more that sort of time and attendance. So, you know, just the sort of clock in, clock out type of thing is not, as MinuteDock's not going to be suitable for that. but the office-based professional side of things, the professional services, your consultants, your project managers, etc., are going to find some value there. All right, David, are there any questions available as we've gone through there that we can go over?
Yeah, there was, and thank you very much for that, Bryce. That was really, really good and informative. So we've got a couple of questions that have come through. So one of them is just saying that if, basically with the projects, if you've already got a list of projects on something like a spreadsheet, is it possible to import information into MinuteDock, when you're setting it up?
So at the moment, there isn't a self-service option for importing projects, but what we do offer through our customer service desk is that we will do that for you, as long as you can provide the spreadsheet information for us. We can get that set up for you.
Okay, cool. So that is something that can be done. Just need to go through you guys. So
yeah, that's right.
To know. Real. And just a question through from Cliff saying, does the My Time goal trackers change color again if you go over budget?
Yeah, so if I'm sort of, you'll see here, I'm looking at a weekly target for whatever it might be. As I'm sort of getting through the week and I'm a bit behind, you'll see that my target there is a different color. It's yellow, saying that I'm a bit behind. If I've set up a target or a budget rather than a target, and doing so just by clicking between the two options when making the goal, then when I go over or towards, and I'm going over my budget, instead of being green, that's going to be a bright red, telling me that I'm in trouble for going over.
Okay, real, thanks for that. And just one final one. Obviously, we know that you integrate with Xero. We were mentioning that earlier, but what other systems do you integrate with as well as Xero?
So the biggest one, other than Xero, would be QuickBooks Online. We integrate with them. We also have an integration with Wave, which is pretty popular, obviously, as a sort of free-to-use service. We also integrate with FreshBooks. There are a couple of others. They're all available to take a look at through our website. They're pretty clear. But the major ones would be QuickBooks, Xero, and Wave.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And that's all the questions. So thanks for sending those in. Just as a bit of a follow-up then, so for anybody that sort of likes a look of MinuteDock, either for themselves or they want to recommend any clients or colleagues to sort of give it a go. So we understand you've got a free trial. How does that work? How long do people have with that?
Yeah, so our free trial, generally, it's standard is 2 weeks when you sign up for it. But having said that, we're very more than happy to extend those out for as long as people really need to get a good grasp of how things might work for them. So we're available always through our help desk, and don't feel bad about asking for more time, because we're more than happy to give it out. And the other thing that I'll point out for this webinar is that if you let us know that this is where you're coming from, this is where you're setting up from, then we're happy to offer an initial 15% discount on any potential subscription.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. And we'll confirm that in the email out afterwards as well. So, well, thanks for that, Bryce. That's been really good. And thanks to everyone for interacting and sending your questions in. Just to confirm, we'll have an email that goes out within the next sort of 24 hours, just following on. We'll have a link to the recording as well if you want to go back to it, or like I say, if you want to pass it on to anybody else. And we'll also just confirm the details of that discount as well. So thanks again, Bryce. We'll let you go. Hopefully you can go rest now while the rest of us finish today's work. All right, thanks. See you later, everybody.
Thanks for that, guys.
Bye.
See ya.